Sixth try starting this video. I just can't concentrate today. Anyway, it's going to be real short. Just two little tips I do to help with clarity that you may not have thought of for your particle effects. So right here, I have this big X for when you defeat an enemy. You see all these other particles. We have like gun explosion going off. Hit sparks here, hit spark here. We have the UI and stuff, and then this big old X right here, all the dust particles, some stuff in the foreground here, getting in the way. In the scene, sorry about this big thing here, that's what generates the blur. But you can see that X is right here. It's actually behind all that stuff. It's behind the ghost. But in here, it's drawing on top. So to do that, it's pretty simple. What I like to do is just tag some of my stuff to actually draw on the UI layer. You don't want to do this too much. You can get a little nuts. But with this particular effect, I think it helps a lot. We will actually see if this updates while it's paused. The game view right here. So we've moved the camera back. And if I actually step through, the X will correct itself, I think. Oh, well, it also updated the character. Forgot the camera's going to want to do that. Let's actually try one more thing here. Do that. Turn this off just for a sec. Step through. So now you can see, we have all this stuff, but this X is drawing on top. Go ahead and step through right there just to finish out the effect. Character's getting beat up here. Try and land another one. And see how that can be helpful. Oops, I can't see very well. Right there. So, it's real simple. Basically, you just do another camera. It's funny when you're starting Unity, and a lot of times people's answer will just be like, add another camera. And in our head, it can feel like that's like add a whole new rendering system or something like that when you're new to it. But that's how you do it. That's usually the solution for stuff like that. We have this UI camera where I draw sort of some environment. I call it Enviro UI. Stuff like that of certain effects, and then like damage numbers that appear on the screen and other little notifications like that. And then I have the actual UI over here, and that's its own right here. And if you're familiar with Unity, you know that it also has like, there's other stuff why you need a whole new camera for that. So the only thing is like add this camera. So I have like this main transform, and you basically just parent it to your normal camera. You want to clear depth only when you do it. Then the culling mask is like what you actually draw. So right here, I just do that one thing. That's all it'll draw. You want to keep all this other stuff the same. This is all basic stuff, but just to go through it real quick. The main thing is just to have like effects that you can kind of have on top, because they're more important than other things. They have all the chaos of like explosions and dust and enemies flying everywhere. You want certain effects to sort of pop. And in the scene, like when you're playing, it still feels sort of, I can't think of the word, but when you have like music in a scene, but it's like coming from the actual radio, like in a movie, you know what I'm saying? I can't think of the word. It exists. It's not like a UI thing, but it kind of is. A lot of stuff like the visual effects like that are actually, for clarity, not just fun. It informs the player. Anyway, and then whenever you make a new particle, just got to make sure and tag everything that's being drawn as that Enviro UI tag. The next little tip, recording okay? Improve the gain. Hopefully this isn't too loud, or I upped the gain on my mic because my videos have been real quiet. Go ahead and do this little thing real quick. Pause it. I'm going to go into the scene. We're going to look at these particles. So this is real similar. When you're doing particles, one of the common things is, or any visual effect, is to draw it on top of the thing, right? So I have these particles that are just on the sword. Whenever she charges up, it creates these little pops and sparkles, and this energy comes in, and I want it to draw in on that sword. If we do it right on the sword, it looks like this. Look back in the scene. It is in there, and there's a little bit of not quite in the right spot. It needs to be offset a little bit. Go ahead and correct that just to show. It looks like that. And that can look okay. Gosh darn it, there's so much stuff in the scene. But you can see it's being drawn behind the sword there. Maybe there wouldn't bother you so much, but it can like clip inside the character. And it's just not quite right. Let's go ahead and step back. So now we're back where we are, and that looks a lot nicer. And it really, to us, the position hasn't changed. But if we look here, it's actually offset a bunch. So it's a real simple trick, but I find this to be just incredibly useful, especially in 3D games where you have hit sparks that are actually like coming out of the enemy, and you want that. You want to embrace that 3D feeling of it. You want these particles to actually exist, like in 3D space. When the camera's moving around, you see that they actually are in 3D space, and it looks nice. You want that feel. We're making it in 3D. Why don't let's lean into that and take advantage of that. So what do you do? Well, it's probably clear now, is that we have this pivot here. And the pivot billboards, if you're not familiar with billboarding, it basically just looks at the camera. You can find billboard scripts everywhere. Basically, I just use this built-in Unity thing, transform.lookAt. You take the camera rotation, and I don't need to go into it really. My own billboard script, I have like a little reverse tag that just either does negative forward or forward, just in case you need to flip it. Sometimes that can be an issue, depending on how your quad was exported and stuff like that. Anyway, not that important. The main thing is that what we do is we billboard this pivot. So it's looking at the camera. So this is its pivot right here. And it's going right to the camera. We go back here, like that. But then all of these are offset on that Z position. Messed it up a little bit, but. And so what that means is that as we rotate around, it looks like it's just still on that sword, right? I mean, look at that. Like, where else would it be? It's on the sword, which is where we want it. But we know that if we go into the scene, it's actually like this. So as we rotate around, this is looking at the camera. Know what I mean? But it keeps the actual particles in front of that, in between us and the camera. So it looks like, it's actually still on that one spot. And it's just a really nice way to make things be at that position of the character, but still be in 3D. So, it's in front of the character. And if we rotate around, it's still like on that character. I meant this light post is in front of the character. And so are the particles. As we look around, it's still on that sword, which is what we want. But we don't have it solves the problem of it being inside a character, inside the model, and you get that clipping and it looks bad, especially like on hit sparks when you're hitting enemies. And so it's a good way to keep that three-dimensionality, and you can like offset it a bit. So you can make it a little dynamic. You could look at the character's bounding box and make it really dynamic and make it so it's just like the Z offset is you know, a formula of like the center position or like the center position of the character. You know what I'm getting at, like the bounding box. So it's basically hitting the edge. But usually you can just get away with a certain level of offset. That can depend on the effect and depend on the character. There's not much to show otherwise. It's just you have a pivot and that pivot billboards, and then you offset all the children based on that forward position, which is usually, or that forward axis, which is usually the Z axis. And yeah, that about covers it. We're actually going to do another video here shortly, but I wanted to get this one out of the way because it's just real quick. It's real helpful because I'm sure you've seen games where like the particle effects are like just coming out of the character, and it can be okay. And you know, you can do that initial one I showed where you draw it on top of everything, but that can get a little nuts. It can take away the three dimensionality. Some of the effects, you know, I wanted it for that when you defeat an enemy, that X. But like for that charged particle one, I just think it's so powerful and it looks so good. And it's such a simple trick. It's nothing new, but it looks really good. So yeah, thanks for watching. Be back here in a sec. I'm going to stop the stream and start over again to do the other video. All right. Thank y'all so much. Love ya. Take care.